Recording. Good. Shalom, shalom. Okay, today we're going to learn the story. We're going to tell the story of Moshe the water carrier. Moshe the water carrier lived in a little tiny town. And of all the people in the little town, he was the lowest of everyone. The rabbi got lots of kavod, lots of honor, and the doctor, and the shoemaker, and the blacksmith, and the grocer, and the shoichet, the person who made the meat, the butcher shop. But Moshe, the water carrier, what was his job? He carried the water, that big stick that goes over your back with two buckets, and he just walked slowly from house to house, bringing everyone a big bucket of water in the morning and a big bucket of water in the evening. Back then, they didn't have plumbing. They didn't have, most people, pretty much everybody, they didn't have plumbing. They didn't have a tap that they could just turn on. They didn't have a tap that they could turn on. So he would bring them their water. And nobody thought much of him. They really considered him to just be part of the scenery. He felt very lowly, very unimportant, even though really water is very important. But he didn't think of himself as being such an important person. The one time of the year that he really felt so special and so important was on Rosh Hashanah. Because every year he would save up, he didn't have very much money, but he would save up his coins, his kopeks, until they went, kopeks are like agurot, until he could make rubles. A ruble is like a shekel, and then he put his shekels, his rubles together till he had just enough money every year, at the end of the year, to travel to the Cheider of Lublin, who was a very famous and awesome Rebbe. And he would go for Rosh Hashanah. And his family, his wife, and his children, they were always so happy for him to go, even though he wasn't home for Rosh Hashanah, because they saw that he got his whole sense of kavod from his Rebbe. The Cheider of Lublin was one of the greatest Rebbes of that generation. He had thousands of Hasidim. And Moshe the water carrier was the simplest Jew from a tiny little town. He was just a water carrier. But when he would arrive in Lublin and get there, the Rebbe would mamish roll out the red carpet. He would be so excited to see him each time. He would say, Moshe, I waited for you. And Moshe's face would light up. He was so happy that the great Rebbe, the Heilige Chozeh Lublin, Chozeh means a seer, Chozeh, like lachazot, lirot. He was a great seer. He was able to look into the depths of a Jew and see who they are and give them the deepest advice. People came from far and wide, all the most honorable people from all over the place, wealthy people. Everyone came to the Cheider of Lublin. And so did Moshe each year. And the Rebbe, the Cheider, always gave him so much kavod. Always made Moshe feel like a new man. Every year when he would come home, it would give him all the strength he needed all year to trudge from house to house, carrying the water on his back with a stick across his back, a big stick, and two big buckets of water. And he'd bring one to one house and one to another house, and then trudge all the way back to the well, take up some more water, bring one to one house, one to another house, all the way back, and again, and again, and again.
I think other people can hear you also.
Oh.
Working, we don't hear.
Oh.
Ask people.
Are people hearing me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Can people hear me? Yeah. Yeah. They're giving thumbs up that they can hear.
Really? You just you can't. It's not working. Oh well. Okay. We'll hear later.
I don't know. So every year he got all his whole sense of being seen in the world, that the great Rebbe of Lublin, he didn't go. There were many other Rebbes he could have gone to. Rebbes who were closer to where he lived. There were a lot of Rebbes in those days. But Moshe chose to go to the absolute greatest Rebbe in all of Poland, the Heilige Chayzer Lublin. And it was really an amazing thing that the Chayzer would take him each year with such kavod, because the Chayzer had millionaires and billionaires, and the Chayzer had the Rebbes and the Rabbanim of every town, and all the school teachers, and everybody would come to him. It was really quite amazing. And Moshe was always careful to come at least 2 or 3 days before Rosh Hashanah, because he knew that it got very busy. Like the day before Rosh Hashanah was so busy. He'd always come 2 or 3 days before, when things weren't quite so busy, and he always got a full half an hour with the Chayzer Lublin. And the Chayzer would invite him in, and he would sit at his table, and he would tell the Chayzer about whatever Divrei Torah he learned that year, and the Chayzer would always listen with a twinkle in his eye. And he would always give Moshe the deepest, greatest brachas, and just make him feel so great. And this is what happened year after year. And every year he would get all his koach for the year to walk and trudge with that water. And every year he would collect his pennies, until he would get the strength and the money to be able to go back again the following year for Rosh Hashanah. One year, something very strange happened. Just like every other year, he was trudging to the well and back, carrying his water. And all year, what would keep him going was the smile that he got from his Rebbe the previous Rosh Hashanah, was the kavod, the honor that he got from the Heilige Chayzer, the greatest Rebbe of his time. And he felt like the lowest Jew in the whole of Poland, but the great Rebbe, the Chayzer Lublin, gave me his smile, gave me the kavod, listened to my little Divrei Torah, the twinkle in his eye, gave me his brachas. I can do it, and he would make it through his whole year this way. And he would collect his money, and just every year, just have enough to get there back for Rosh Hashanah. So this one year, something very strange happened. He did the same thing he did every year, collected his money, went from place to place, till finally he made it to Lublin for Rosh Hashanah, and he came his customary 2 or 3 days early, so he could be sure to have a good amount of time with his Rebbe. And this time, when he went in, the Rebbe said to him, he looked him in the eye without a smile, and he said, Moshe, you better go home. You better go home right away. Moshe couldn't believe it. Rebbe, what's wrong? What's wrong? And he looked at him with a very sharp look. He said, Moshe, if you accept me as your Rebbe, and you accept the things that I say, and Moshe said, of course I do, Rebbe. Every year you give me my whole strength all year to carry my water. I couldn't live my life without that kavod and simcha that you give me. Of course you're my Rebbe. He said, well, Moshe, if you accept me as your Rebbe, you got to turn around and not stay here for one more second. You better go straight home right now. Moshe couldn't believe it. Because you see, the thing is, he would get such strength each year from his Rebbe, from the smile and the kavod that his Rebbe would give him. But by the time a whole year was up, he needed some new gas. He needed some new simcha, some new kavod from his Rebbe. And now his Rebbe looked at him, and he looked upset and didn't look happy to see him. And he was telling him to turn around and go straight home. Moshe felt so awful, so empty. Not only was he empty from a whole year of waiting to see his Rebbe, but now when he finally got there, his Rebbe's telling him he doesn't want to see him. He's telling him to turn around and go home. He couldn't believe it. Wow. When he walked out of the Chayz Lublin's house, he was a sad Jew. Couldn't believe that had happened. He turned around, saddled his horses, started slowly trotting away, didn't even know where exactly to go. It was a few days' journey to get home. Just outside Lublin was a little town with a kretschme, with a little like motel, a little place where a little inn where he could stay over the night. And he just didn't have the heart to travel further. He checked into this motel and went downstairs from his room to see if he could get a little something to eat before going to sleep. Meanwhile, who had checked in to that motel? A whole bunch of other Hasidim who were on their way to go see the Chayzer. So they all saw Moshe sitting there, and they didn't really know him. They were all from different cities, all from different places, but they could recognize a Jew who was feeling sad. They could see Moshe was feeling just so sad. So they went over to him and said, Moshe, they said, what's your name? He said, my name is Moshe. He said, how are you? Is everything okay? He said, no, things are terrible. I went in to go see my Rebbe, the Chayzim Lublin, and he told me to turn around and go home. I get all my strength for my whole year from coming to see him. And now he's sending me home. Everything is just terrible. And he just started to cry. Now his newfound friends, they felt so bad for him. You know what they did? They went over to the owner of the kretschme and said, do you have any l'chaims in this inn? And the innkeeper said, of course I do. Of course. He pulled out some vodka, started pouring l'chaims. And each of the other Hasidim, they started making l'chaims to Moshe. Said, Moshe, please, Moshe, lift up your head. Take a little cup. Drink a little bit of l'chaim with us. Let's start making l'chaims that this year, after all, Rosh Hashanah is coming. This year should be absolutely the greatest year. And they started making l'chaims, and one chassid got up and he said, Moshe, I want to give you the biggest l'chaim. The water that you carry this year should feel like feathers. It should be so easy for you, because they found out from him what he did, that he was a water carrier. And another one said that I'm blessing you, that you should have no arguments with your wife. You should have a year of such shalom bayis in your home. And the other one said, I'm blessing you that your children should give you only so much nachas. And another one said, I'm blessing you, your davening should be the greatest year of davening. And I'm blessing it. Each time that he got a bracha, all the Hasidim yelled out, L'chaim! And meanwhile, the little room where everyone was eating in the inn was filling up throughout the night, because there were lots and lots of Hasidim on their way to Lublin, to the Chayzer for Rosh Hashanah, until there was maybe more than 100 people there. And each time somebody would get up, each person, 100 people, they each got up and made a big bracha, and the whole room answered, L'chaim! Until by the end, they cheered up Moshe so much that he just actually started to dance. And all the Hasidim were dancing with him, and they were lifting him up over their heads. And he was like on top of the crowd, Moshe the water carrier. And even though he was going to have to go home, he felt happy. He felt that he got lots of kavod, the kind of kavod he never got in his little town. He felt that people were seeing him. He felt people were loving him. He felt people were giving him bracha, and he felt that Hashem was going to answer all of these brachas and give him a wonderful year. Then a funny thing happened. They were partying and singing all night. They woke up in the morning and davened Shachris, and they were still in such a great mood. And then it was time for everyone to go to the Rebbe in Lublin. All the other Hasidim started getting ready to go to Lublin. Meanwhile, Moshe started saddling up his horses to go in the other direction. Right? The Rebbe himself had told him, don't come to me this year. And he started riding off. But then his friends ran after him and said, Moshe, after such a wonderful special night, you're just going to go home? He said, but the Rebbe said. Yeah, the Rebbe said, but you know, the Gemara says that when you're in someone's house, Kol asher tomer lecha bal habayis aseh chutz mitzeh. When you're a guest in someone's house, you have to listen to everything they say, unless they say, get out of my house. Very interesting chazal. It really is. It does exist like that in the Gemara, such a Gemara. You could look into that, ask your tatis what that means. Everything that the Balabayas says, you have to do, except when he says, get out of here. So, this is the one time you could not listen to the Chazim Lublin. He told you to go home and get out of here. We're telling you, you don't have to listen. Come with us. And they made more l'chaims. And he said, okay. And the simcha from the previous night was just filling him up. And he went back with the Hasidim to Lublin. And when they rode up to the Rebbe's house, the Rebbe was actually standing outside. And he was greeting each person. And when the Cheider saw Moshe, an amazing thing happened. The Cheider lit up with a big smile. And he invited Moshe in again. And gave him all the kavod and all the simcha that he used to every single year, like it was normal again. Moshe was very perplexed. He couldn't understand what's going on here. Just yesterday, the Rebbe had sent him away. Finally, he took the Rebbe's bracha, and it was already getting closer to Rosh Hashanah. There wasn't so much time for him to ask the Rebbe what's going on. He took all the Rebbe's brachas, and the Rebbe gave him his big smile and made him feel so great. And then, before he knew it, it was time for the Rebbe to see the next person, and Rosh Hashanah came in, and they heard the shofar, and had the greatest Rosh Hashanah, and now Moshe had all these brand new friends. He used to be that he wouldn't talk to anybody. He would just be there, get his koach from the Rebbe, get his honor and his simcha from the Rebbe every year, but he would always just sit on the side. But now everybody knew him. It had become like a famous night the night before, where everybody was saying l'chaims and giving him koach to go back to the Rebbe, and everyone had heard what had happened. So now throughout the davening, people recognized him. Somebody even gave him an aliyah that he never got an aliyah before on Rosh Hashanah. Somebody bought it for him. They were so happy to see him. Finally, after what was the greatest Rosh Hashanah of Moshe's life, he didn't used to go to see the Rebbe after Rosh Hashanah. After Rosh Hashanah, people would just file by. After Rosh Hashanah, they would just walk by one, and each person would just give the Rebbe his hand and say goodbye. But if you really wanted to, you could stay an extra day and make an appointment to see the Rebbe for a few minutes the day after Rosh Hashanah. Moshe never used to do this. He used to always just file by and say goodbye to the Rebbe the night after Rosh Hashanah and start back to his family. But this time, he was too curious. He decided to stay one extra day so he could ask the Cheider what is going on. How could it be that one day he tells him to go home, and the next day when he sees him, he's so happy to see him? What is going on over here? So he stayed an extra day, and he was so curious. And he made an appointment, and he came in the day after Rosh Hashanah. The Rebbe again was so happy to see him and gave so much kavod and made him feel so great. And he said to the Rebbe, please, can I ask you a question? The Cheider said, of course, please. He said, Rebbe, when I came to you the first time this year, you looked at me, you looked so, I don't know what it was. I couldn't tell what exactly. You seemed like upset, and you told me that I should just go straight home, and I was so heartbroken. I felt like maybe I did something wrong. I couldn't understand what was going on. And I followed your instructions, and I left. And then when I came back the next day, suddenly you were so happy to see me. What's going on? Did you want me to come? You didn't want me to come? What is going on here? And the Heilige Cheider looked at him with a twinkle in his eye, and he said, You know why I'm called the Cheider? You know what it means? I'm able to see certain things. Hashem gave me a blessing, special gift, a matana, that when I look at a Yid, I can see more than just what's going on in this world. And I could see, Moshe, I could see, unfortunately, the Malach HaMaves, Lo Aleinu, the angel of death, Lo Aleinu, was coming over you, and that I could see you only had a few days left to live. And so I got really scared. That's what I was feeling. I wasn't upset with you. I was just scared. I was scared that you would leave the world without getting a chance to say goodbye to your family. So that's why I said in such a big hurry, Moshe, go straight home. I didn't even have the heart. It was so heartbreaking for me to see this. I couldn't bring myself to tell you why. It was like, how could I tell a person that it looks like he doesn't have many more days left to live? You should go. I just told you to go home, and you would understand once you'd get there, because surely you were going to be getting sick. But then, Moshe, when you stopped at that inn, those friends, the other Hasidim, he said they were able to do something absolutely wondrous. They saw you were so sad, and they, with the deepest and most purest intention, with the most wonderful kavanah, they all gave you blessings. They made so many lechaims, and mamish, they gave you your life back. Moshe was amazed, really amazed. And the Cheider said, yes, you see what a few good Jewish friends can do? You see what a few good lechaims can do? They have great, great power. He gave Moshe a big hug, and Moshe went back home and had a wonderful year, a wonderful whole bunch of years, and he lived to a ripe old age. This story is a very, very special story because it teaches us that there are certain things that even the biggest rebbes can't do, but that our friends can do. Isn't that amazing? The Cheider had such a gift. He was able to see the Malach HaMaves. But you know what? When you're able to see the Malach HaMaves, when you're able to see what's going on spiritually, sometimes, because you can see it so clearly, it becomes harder to do something about it. It becomes harder to change it. All you can do is just tell the chassid, go home, go home. But his friends, who had no idea what was going on, his friends had no idea that there was any Malach HaMaves. All they saw was a Jew who was in distress. All they saw was a Moshe who was just feeling sad. And all they wanted to do was make him feel better. And that purity of intention, that goodness of their heart, Hashem from Shamayim saw, wow, look at these Yidden who love Moshe so much. Look at these beautiful blessings they're giving him. How can I let the Malach HaMaves touch Moshe, the water carrier? No way. And so Hashem took away the Malach HaMaves. Isn't that an amazing thing? Sometimes, sometimes we feel like we're limited because we don't understand, because we wish we could see like the holy seer of Lublin, like the Cheider of Lublin. But sometimes maybe it's actually a blessing not to be able to see. Sometimes maybe it's a blessing just to be able to see simply. Then there's a Jew who's sad, and to just try and make him feel better. Because who knows what kinds of blessings, what kinds of bracha that could open up in Shemayim. Right now we're all sitting in our houses, and there are so many people right next to us in our own families that we could make them feel happier. We could give them a l'chaim. We could give them a bracha. We have no idea what Hashem is doing. None of us is the seer of Lublin right now. No one understands why there's this terrible magefa, this terrible plague, this machala, this sickness that's going around and so scary. None of us can see. But what we can see are the people around us who need us. What we can see are all the Moshe, the water carriers, which is really each one of us. Even sometimes your Ima or your Abba, if you come and give them a hug and say, L'chaim Ima, L'chaim Abba, who knows what you might be able to do for them. Children can give such simcha to their parents and to each other and to their friends. We have no idea what kind of bracha we can give each other. And maybe that bracha and those lechayims and that strength that we give each other can be even more powerful than what the holy Chayz of Lublin can do. Because that's the beauty of Chasidus, that's the beauty of Am Yisrael. It's not just about the tzaddikim, it's about how the tzaddikim relate to the whole Am Yisrael. It's about all of Moshe Rabbeinu and all Am Yisrael. The pasuk that we find the most in the Torah is Daber el bnei Yisrael vaydaber Shem el Moshe leimor. Hashem spoke to Moshe to tell all Am Yisrael. Hashem needs Moshe. Hashem needs all of Am Yisrael. Hashem needs the tzaddikim. Hashem needs all of us, and all together, we can do wonderful, wonderful things and give each other such bracha and such chayim. So great to see all of you today. Have a wonderful day. Kol tov.